Good evening, and it is another episode of the Parks and Bennis podcast. We had an international break. Like everyone, we took the break from football from 2 weeks. The last you would have heard from us would have been talking about Crystal Palace, thumping Leeds United 4-1, and what's making them tick at the moment. But as we're back from the international break and having to watch England, I didn't even watch England, but having to watch England for most people who are mature. We'll go and talk about what is to come in the Premier League. Now we've had these first batch of games. What can we expect from every club going forward? And within a microcosm of that, the games this weekend, and I don't know what can we expect from the 10 fixtures of weekend. I'm pleased to say joining Aaron this time is Paul McAllister. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm okay, mate. I'm glad it's Friday. It's been a stressful week, and I just want to relax over the weekend and get back to watching proper football and not this international rubbish.
Yeah, I can fully get on board with that. Aaron, are you doing good, mate?
Yeah, I'm alright. Just glad the international break's finally over, innit?
Oh wow, I can't sort of derive any pleasure from watching any international game. It just winds the living daylight out. Oh wow. Um, uh, on that theme, a fan base that do wind me up is Newcastle United, and they're playing Chelsea at 12:30 tomorrow. Before I talk about, I'll go to you first, Paul. Newcastle v Chelsea. What do you think? We'll start with Newcastle. What have you made in Newcastle so far, and
so far
for the rest of the season? Yeah,
Newcastle have just been Newcastle, haven't they? Where they're not so bad that they look like they're going to go down, but they're not good enough to look like they're going to challenge for anything, and probably not good enough to even get in the top half. I mean, I do like Steve Bruce. I know he's one of those British merry-go-round managers who it's just easy to laugh at and say that he's a joke and that he's been left behind. But I think he's better than people give him credit for. And one thing I'm happy about is since he's got into that Newcastle job, he's just basically shown the world how overrated Benitez was there. Because Benitez was getting held up as some sort of miracle worker for what he was doing at Newcastle. And since Bruce has gone in there, they actually look like a better team. Team with a bit more solidity and a team with a bit more of an identity, even if it's not very good to watch. So Newcastle, as I said, you can almost picture how they're going to play at every game, and you can probably call every result because they're not a great team. They're not exactly terrible. They're just a team that's hanging about in the Premier League around mid-table, and that's probably all they're going to be while Mike Ashley's there. So it's hard to really get wound up by them or to get behind them one way or the other, at least for me.
And I know for one personally, and he'll deny this now, but I know Aaron loves Newcastle United and the fan base and how humble they are. I'll ask you the same question. What have you made of Newcastle so far, and what can we expect from them going forward?
It's just very mediocre, isn't it? I mean, it's nothing we wouldn't expect from a Newcastle side coached by Steve Bruce. They're currently 13th. Their last 3 games have been a win, a draw, and a defeat. Like I said, it's just mediocre. They're currently mid-table. They're solid, and again, it's just everything you'd expect from Newcastle at the moment.
Yeah, I find it interesting what you said about Benitez there, Paul. I tend to agree. It felt like every week for about 3 years when Benitez was at Newcastle, they were forever in the relegation battle. Now, I don't know if they actually were or not, but he was making out that they were the most hard done by club on the planet. Steve Bruce has gone in there. No one really associates them with a relegation battle anymore. And I don't know if that's the difference in sort of, I don't know, tone from the managers or whether genuinely Steve Bruce has made them a better team. What do you think of that?
They've just got Newcastle fans. They've just got this idea that they're this sort of Hollywood A-list club when they couldn't be further from that. And they never have been close to that, apart from one season in the mid-90s. Like they're like us in the sense that they want a big manager. They want the sort of figurehead who they can all get behind, who's well known throughout the game and been respected. Like we've got with Ancelotti right now. what we've got with Ancelotti right now is what they must have felt they had when they had Benitez. But the difference was Benitez wasn't really taking them anywhere, whereas you can see kind of the idea that Ancelotti's trying to put down here, and what Klopp was putting down in his first year and a half at Liverpool, and what Guardiola was putting down in his first season at City. But whilst Benitez was there, it didn't look like there was any sort of idea, long-term plan. It just was a manager there getting his money and being happy to be worshipped. Whereas Steve Bruce is the complete opposite of that. He's not in love with himself like Benitez is. He's not desperate to get out there and get a bigger job like Benitez clearly was. And he's not one, even if he feels it privately, he's not one to be moaning in the media about how hard done he is by the owner. So I think that's just kind of reflected in how Newcastle are kind of viewed by the world now, whether their fans like it or not. They want to be thought of as this sort of big, important club. And they were probably felt justified in feeling like that when they had a big name manager there. But now that they've got a manager who's just happy to keep his head down and get on with the job, no one's paying them any minds really, apart from the week that they're going to be playing them. I don't think any Newcastle, any sport in the country really thinks about Newcastle too much unless Newcastle's their next game, and that must drive them mad because their fans are just obsessed with being seen as something important and special.
Yeah, on Steve Bruce himself, I think I've been one who said that he's been doing a good job so far in Newcastle. I think forever people don't like watching them play. I think they get results, and I think they're effective at what they do. There's a lot of teams in the Premier League who I don't know, flattered to deceive, and you get applauded for the way they play or what have you. But a lot of them are below Newcastle, so I think you've got to take a hat off to Steve Bruce, and he might get criticism from the fans for his style of play. But I think that's more born out of frustration from the ownership and the lack of direction coming from there than it is from Steve Bruce's management, who I actually think has done a fairly decent job. On Chelsea, they've certainly improved before the international break to beat Burnley and Sheffield United. They drew 0-0 on Man United. They look more solid now. I feel like Frank Lampard's teams come together more cohesively than they were at the start of the season. Aaron, I'll start with you on this one. What do you think we can expect from Chelsea going forward now? Haven't seen them click so far, or albeit briefly.
Well, I think it's what we really expected from a side with so many transfers in the summer that was going to take a bit of time for them to gel. But now they're currently fifth. I'd say that's a pretty healthy position at this stage of the season. They're only 3 points off the top, and like you say, they've been looking a lot better in recent weeks. So with the amount of talent that they have in attacking midfield, especially, I think we'd all expect them to drastically improve both their performances and their results going forward. So I think I would expect a pretty big period of the season from Chelsea, and if they're going to be up there challenging for the league, this is a crucial part of the season for them to really start getting the results together.
Yeah, Paul, I'll ask you the same question.
It's weird, Chelsea. This feels like the third season that they've been in some sort of transition, because they were in transition when they brought in Sarri and they changed to his style of football, and they brought in a couple of his big players like Jorginho and Higuain, and then they binned that off after 1 year, just when it looked like it was coming together. They finished that season third and winning the Europa League. And last season he went to Lampard and just played a load of youngsters, and they were in transition again, and then it looked like it was coming together again at the end of the season. They got in the top four and they got to another cup final. And now this season they've just twisted again, and they've kept the same manager, but they came and bought a load of new players, and the players who got them to where they were last season aren't getting much of a look in anymore. So it reminds me a lot of what we did in 2017, that summer, where we just went out and blew a load of money on lots of shiny new big name players. It feels like they've done the same, and now obviously it's gelled and come together a lot quicker than it did for Everton. It never came together at all for Everton that season. It seems like at Chelsea that the first month and a half of the season, it was just a lot of trying different things, trying to put players here and there and get them all in too quickly, and then looks like Frank's realised that some certain players are going to need longer to adapt, and it looks like it's very, very slowly clicking, like maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I do think they'll be up there come the end of the season. I don't think they're going to challenge for the title, but I do think they'll be in the top 4 if they don't get battered by injuries. You can never predict that. But I do think Chelsea, the players that got in, unlike what Everton did in 2017, are proven quality. These are players who are quite young, and in 3 or 4 years' time, these are going to be genuine world-class players who are going to be starring in World Cups and Champions Leagues and things like that. So Chelsea, they're in for another season of maybe nothing really special in terms of a league title or a Champions League victory, but they might pick up another cup again. They'll probably finish in the top 4, and Frank will probably do enough to keep the job, and it'll be a season that they can ultimately put down as a positive one.
Yeah, I think if that happens, I think it will be incredibly positive. I think from Frank Lampard's point of view, he's basically come from. He did get the job because of his link to Chelsea. There's no question of that. But he's come from a position at Derby where he got less points and goals and conceded more than Gary Rowett to do the Chelsea job. So it's difficult to get at that level straight away. I think he did a good job last season in getting top 4. I know that the league with the top 4 wasn't as strong, but he caught Leicester and he finished 4th, didn't he? So he did well. I think he obviously brought in a good group in the summer of players who clearly improved from what they had last season. I think for this season, I think the target should be to finish in the top 4 again. And I think if they can do better in the Champions League, then good. But apart from that, do we all expect them to beat Newcastle?
Yeah, I'd say so, definitely. You can see the quality between them is obvious. I think it'll be a tough game for Chelsea. Newcastle set up to be hard to beat, but Chelsea should have the quality to get to overcome Newcastle in the end.
I think for me, it's a question of who gets the first goal. I think if Newcastle score first, it could be an awkward game. I think if Chelsea scored the first goal, it could be 3 or 4-0. I think that's just the way it is in most Newcastle games at the moment. They struggle to get themselves going to really come from behind once they conceded. If they get the first goal, they can, put everyone on the goal line and let the ball away for the rest of the game. Seems to be the way. Paul, would you expect Chelsea to win?
I don't think they will. I think it'll be a draw. I think Newcastle will grind something out here because Chelsea are a young team and they do tend to blow out on colds. They can look really, really great one week, and then the next week they can just fall. They can have a really bad 15-20 minute spell in a game and ultimately lose points over it. So I think the game will seesaw. They'll have a period of the game, probably most of the game, where they just look a level above or multiple levels above Newcastle, and they're just passing it around for fun. And Newcastle are hanging on for dear life, and the goalkeeper's having to keep them in it. But I just can't
Newcastle
shake this game. Yeah, well, I do see Newcastle scoring, to be honest. I think Newcastle will put one past them, and it just depends how many Chelsea can put past Newcastle whilst they're on top in the game. So, for me, I'll go for a 1-1. I think Chelsea will take the lead, but unless they put Newcastle to bed, I can see Newcastle coming back strong for the last period of the game, maybe the last 20 minutes or so, and nicking an equaliser. So I'll go for a 1-1.
That wouldn't surprise me, equally. We'll move on to a game which I'm looking at straight away, and I can see there'll be lots of goals in it, and that's Aston Villa and Brighton. Start with Aston Villa. They've had a really good start to the season, considering they barely stayed up last season. And I still don't know quite how they stayed up, but that's a different debate. They started really well. I think Barkley and Grealish and McGinn, Watkins, they look really good, and I don't know what to say because I don't really want them to do well, but they're doing well. And Dean Smith has turned doubters into believers of Villa Park. Aaron, I know you'll be really happy to talk about how well Aston Villa are doing.
Bookmark this. Save the date. You're about to hear Aaron Bennis praising Aston Villa.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no denying that they've had an excellent start to the season. I do think that their transfer activity in the summer has played a big part in what they've been doing, because I think Grealish and Watkins in attack, as well as Barkley just in behind. I think that's a very good attack, as well as Trezeguet, who, to be fair to him, has looked much better this season. I did really expect there to be a lot of goals between Villa and Brighton. Villa haven't been bad defensive. I think they've actually been alright, but we've seen from last season they're capable of being suspect at the back. Brighton have also looked suspect at the back this season. Especially, I don't know if Lewis Dunk is back from suspension yet, but we all know the story with Brighton. They create plenty of chances. Yeah, they create plenty of chances. They have all the possession, but they fail to take any of their chances. So I would probably expect Aston Villa to get all 3 points here, but I don't think that's a given either. I think Brighton are capable of getting a result, so it definitely could be an interesting one. I'd expect an entertaining game between these two sides.
It is a question. Do you expect Aston Villa to play into the hands of Brighton? There's teams that are smart. I'm not saying Aston Villa aren't smart, but they play an open game. They could, I think, in some way help Brighton, but West Brom should have helped Brighton and we didn't. So we'll see. We'll talk about Brighton in a minute, but Paul, I'll ask you the same question on Aston Villa.
I've been impressed with Aston Villa, to be honest, not just because of the results, but just the way they play. They look like they've got a lot more swagger about them now, like a lot more inner confidence, because last season, particularly in the second half of the season, where they went a long while without really winning many games, they ultimately got enough in the end just to stay up by the skin of the teeth, but they looked like they were doomed for a good period. They seem to lack a lot of grit, and if Grealish didn't turn up on another worldly of a performance, then there was nothing really much about them. I know they had McGinn get injured in the middle of the season, which really didn't help them, but they just seem like a team that folded very easily, whereas this season, it seems like they've all grown as a group type thing. Maybe they've bonded over the summer and over the experience. Maybe Dean Smith's changed something in the way he manages them on the training grounds, or just maybe the experience of going that close to relegation has scared a lot of them into pulling the socks up. But I like what they're doing, because they seem like a team now that isn't willing to just go into games and be happy settling for a scrappy draw. Obviously, the game against Liverpool is the ultimate example. They just went in and they weren't bothered at all by who the opposition was. They weren't one bit intimidated. They thought, no, we're going to take you on here. We're going to go toe-to-toe and we're going to beat you up. And that's what they've done. Barkley was a really shrewd deal. He's come in and he's been brilliant with Grealish. They've got a great little partnership going. And if both those two stay fit all season, then I think they've got a really good chance of getting in the top half of the table. I don't think relegation should be anything they will be concerning themselves about. So yeah, I've been really impressed with Villa, and they're not going to keep winning games and stay near the top of the table for much longer. But I don't see them spiraling or going on any mad losing runs at any point in the campaign. So fair play to them. They look like they've really, really learned from last season and grown as a team.
Yeah. I actually expect them to lose this game, mainly because when Villa are as favourites to win a game, they don't tend to do very well. Whereas I think Brighton, they need to win another game at some point. We all know the Brighton story so far under Graham Potter, and I just expect them to pull something out the bag here. We may as well talk about Brighton now. I'll start with Paul. What have your thoughts on what Brighton have done so far this season? What you expect going forward?
Again, they're just one of these fashionable teams with a lot of pundits, aren't they? And I personally don't understand why. Just because they do lots of passes in midfield, it doesn't get their results clearly, does it? I know they haven't got a goal scorer, which is the big problem for them. They just can't put the ball in the net, and you're not going to be winning many games when you're throwing a Danny Welbeck up front, who seems like he's just been made of glass his entire career. What are they really expecting? Glenn Murray's not there anymore, he would still get his head on a few things and get them maybe half a dozen goals a season. But Brighton, do you know, if there wasn't 3 teams that I think are worse than them, I'd pick them to go down, because it's just simple maths, isn't it? Only 3 teams can get relegated, and I do ultimately think there's 3 teams who are just poorer than them. But it's not really saying much, because I think in a lot of other Premier League seasons, the way Brighton are now, I'd pick them to go down, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go down next season unless they bring in 2 or 3 real goal-scoring players, because there are some talented players in that team they've got, and I do think Graham Potter's a manager who's got some interesting ideas, and he could probably do well if he makes a few shrewd signings. But looking at Brighton right now, I don't see anything other than a relegation battle for them.
We all know my thoughts on Brighton, so I'll pass to Aaron.
We all know my thoughts on Brighton as well, and it's just I won't be saying anything I haven't said before. I do think that they have what it takes to finish comfortably mid-table, or certainly clear relegation, but that all rides on them scoring some goals, because they have the chances, they go with the possession, and they do create chances, but ultimately they're lacking that quality in the final third. I feel like it's got to come to a point where it will click, even just for a period this season that will see them become clear of relegation. But Brighton will look at this game against Villa as one, despite Villa's good form and high position. I don't actually think there's much between the 2 squads, so this will be a game that Brighton will look at as one to get a crucial 3 points, and I do think it will be a close one, regardless of how Villa have been doing so far this season.
Yeah, I expect a close game. If I was to predict, I'd say 2-1 to Brighton. Quick predictions, anyone?
Ooh, probably 2-2. I'll say I'll go safe. 2-2 draw.
Yeah. Paul?
It'll be a close game on paper when you look at the stats afterwards, but for me, the fact of the matter is Villa have got players who can take the chances and Brighton haven't. So I'll go for a 3-0 to Aston Villa.
Cool. For me, after the obvious, the El Clasico, Spurs v Man City is the game I'm looking forward to the most this weekend. I think it'll be a really interesting game. I think the winner will be set up perfectly for the season. I think the loser, bit of a reality check. I'll speed up and talk about them both generally. Spurs, Man City, Aaron. What can you expect from both teams, from what we've seen before, and ultimately what you expect?
Well, apart from the last 20 or so minutes against West Ham, Spurs have looked very, very good this season. They're second in the league for a reason, and I think this is certainly at least one of the games to watch this weekend. I'd argue City haven't had as bad a season as the league position suggests, considering they win their game in hand, they're immediately 3 points off the top. But yeah, this will be an interesting one. Spurs are probably the favourites on form, but we all know what City are capable of against anyone. So just generally speaking, it'll be a close one. Could definitely go either way, and I do think both teams have the quality to win, so it'll be an interesting one.
Paul, what do you expect?
Manchester City, I think they've been affected by all the uncertainty around Guardiola. I do think that plays on players' minds, and it always affects teams' performances. Even the best teams, you can see what happened to United that season, that Ferguson announced he was retiring at the end of the year, and the form fell off a cliff, and then he announced he was staying, and then the form went back to normal, or what people considered normal at the time. Wenger, during that season at Arsenal, I think he ended up signing a new deal, but there was a lot of speculation about what was going to happen to him, and Arsenal's players just all seemed to lose their heads and went on this really bad run. And I think the same kind of happened with City. Of all the players who were there, like Aguero, Ederson, Gabriel Jesus, Sterling. They're probably all wondering what's going on with the manager. Is he staying? Is he with us? Is he going? If he does go, what am I going to do? Shall I look to leave as well? Now that he's just announced he's signing a new deal, I think that was announced today. I expect City to fly up now, and I really think they'll get back in amongst the title contention. I mean, they're still in title contention. It's really early in the season, but what I mean is, I imagine them to go into the top two and stay in the top two for the rest of the season. So, and Tottenham, it looks like Mourinho's been a really good fit there. I mean, a lot of people weren't sure when he went in, but it seems like his ideas are slowly getting across now, and it's coming together for him. A lot of the big names like Kane and Son look like they enjoy playing for him, which didn't look like it was the case 6-7 months ago. So Tottenham will have a good season, and I think City will have a good season, or a usual season by their standards. For this game, it will be a lot of chances, but I think City will just edge it.
Cool. For me, I think Tottenham will win the game. I think they'll hit City on the break, and I think if I'm going to predict, I'll say 2-1. What would you say, Aaron?
I think, like I said, I think it'll be a close one. I'd probably say 1-1.
1-1. Cool. Moving on then. The 8 o'clock game gets played a Saturday night, 8 o'clock. Anyway, that's a different argument. Man United beat Man United in the game that was going to the final leg on Solskjaer's tenure at Man U. He beat Everton. I don't actually think he'd have been sacked if he'd have lost, to be honest, but the media and the narrative, I think this is a game that's a must-win. Do you not agree, Aaron?
Yeah, this is definitely one that they should be looking at to get a comprehensive victory. West Brom are down the bottom of the league for a reason, but United just haven't been good enough. I mean, they're currently 14th in the league with a poor manager, if you ask me. Yeah, this should be a comfortable Man United victory. They've got the quality. West Brom don't have the quality. So if they fail to win, questions should already be asked of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But if they fail to win this one, then I'd argue that should probably be the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah. Paul, what do you think?
I know Manchester United have been really up and down all season, but West Brom are easily the worst team in the league from what I've seen. I don't say that to be put them down. It's just your eyes don't lie to you. They look really poor, and I really think they're going to finish 20th. So Man United, they've got the players they've got. They're just, even on their off days, they're still a lot better than players that West Brom are going to be putting out there. So I don't see anything but a Man United victory. It probably won't be swashbuckling stuff. I don't see an absolute rout like a 4 or 5-0 that you probably expect when you look at the teams on paper. But I still think United will have enough here, even if they don't play the best and they put in a performance that we're used to seeing from them so far. They don't have to. What I'm saying basically is they don't have to hit the level that they played against Everton in order to beat West Brom. So if West Brom get anything out of this game, I think that's an amazing result. And if United don't win it, then Solskjaer might as well not even go back to the hotel afterwards. Might well just go back to training ground, get all his stuff, and leave. But no, I don't see that happening. I can see United winning this, and my prediction will be 2-0.
Yeah, I must agree on West Brom. I think that I do think they'll finish 20th now, even if Adam Lookman's doing everything possible for Fulham not to win games. Aaron, predictions today?
3-0 Man United.
Amazing. I will go 3-0 as well. I just can't make any case for West Brom to get points.
No, I can't, to be honest, either.
I don't know, do they keep Bilic? Will it make any difference? I doubt it. They just have a really poor squad.
I think they should keep him, but I don't think they will. They'll probably get to about late December, early January, and they'll realise that keeping Bilic is not going to keep them in the league. So they'll probably gamble and bring in some manager who they hope can just pull a miracle out of that hat, but he won't be able to.
Yeah.
Guardiola at his absolute best wouldn't keep them up.
I think it would depend on who would replace Bilic, because I think they've mainly their attack. I don't actually think a front three of Pereira, Grant, and Diangana is that bad. But I think really the rest of the team is where the problems lie. So it would depend on which coach was to come in.
Can you hear us, mate?
Yeah. I think it would depend. I think did they get someone in for the champion and the position they were in? I think I don't know. They would have to get someone out of the club. I don't think now they would get someone in the job. But then you look them down the marquees of the world, and is it really worth it?
No, not if it's him. No, if they go down, I think they should do what.
Move on. Fulham v Everton. Hello.
Yeah, there's like a really bad buzz in the background.
Yeah, I can hear that. Can we all hear each other?
I can slightly hear you.
Aaron?
No, I can't hear you now, mate. No, West Brom sack Bilic. I think they're better off just keeping him, to be honest, and do what Burnley did with Dyche and just let him kind of build the entire club in his own image and put down some long-term foundations. Because what else are they going to do? They bring someone else in, just pay some random Spanish or French manager to come in and see if he can do anything. It's not going to work. That.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I hear you again.
Right, we'll go from there. Yeah. Let's move on to Fulham and Everton then. Can we agree?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think another team that's really in trouble is Fulham. Now, this is one where I do think there's potential in the team to maybe stay up. I think there's better players in the Fulham team than there is West Brom personally. And I think Scott Parker is probably underachieving there. I think, but it's a question of what do you do. Aaron, have you got any thoughts on Fulham?
It's really just about them getting the results. I mean, they're in a relegation battle. That's what they need to do. I've always said Scott Parker probably isn't good enough. Whether that's down to his lack of experience as a manager or whether he's just not up for it is up for debate. But I think they probably need to at some point part ways with Scott Parker, especially if they're looking like they're in a good position to survive. I think they played West Ham last time out, and I actually thought they looked all right. Obviously, Adam Lookman ruined it for them, and they failed to snatch a point right to the death. But ultimately, I would say Fulham probably have more than West Brom to survive. But it's about getting the performances and then turn those performances into results. At the moment, they're just not doing that, and they're facing another tough test against Everton on the weekend.
Well, you think it's a tough test. Me and Paul think Fulham will have a great time with it. So me and Paul talk about Everton a lot. What are your thoughts on Everton?
Well, I think they've just had a bit of a poor spell recently. I mean, they've lost the last 3 games, but I do still think they've got what it takes to challenge the top six. They looked very, very good at the start of the season, and I would expect them to return to that form sooner rather than later. And ultimately, I think everyone would expect that will come this weekend against Fulham, because Fulham are one of, if not the weakest side in the league, and Everton are looking very strong. So, is Richarlison back?
Yeah.
Then that's just another reason why everyone would expect Everton to get the win, because Richarlison is, if it's not James Rodriguez, Richarlison is Everton's best and most important player. With him returning, it should be a comfortable victory for Everton for me.
I'm going to say, I have a horrible feeling about the game, but I'll say 3-1 Everton. Aaron, what would you say?
I think something similar. Say 3-0 Everton.
Paul?
2-0 Everton.
Yeah. Sheffield United and West Ham. I'll start with you, Aaron. What are your thoughts on the game?
First and foremost, and no disrespect to West Ham, but I really want Sheffield United to win this one. I think they've looked very poor. They're obviously bottom of the league for a reason, and West Ham have surprised me. I thought they'd be lower in the table, but they're 12th at the moment, so they're doing fine. But Sheffield United will look at one of these games as an opportunity to get a crucial win. They're at home, not that means loads without any fans, but I'd say this might be a game where West Ham could slip up. If they're not on it, I think Sheffield United might just have enough to get over the line, but it will be a close one.
I personally think Sheffield United will edge them. Actually, what were your thoughts on the game?
I'll start with West Ham. I'm very surprised West Ham are doing as well as they're doing, because I thought keeping Moyes there for a full season, I didn't expect that. I thought they'd part ways with him in the summer. They just do what they did the first time, get him in, steady the ship, and then trade him off for a sexier manager. But this time they've stuck with him and they're going to give him time to build something. And fair play to Moyes, he's looking like the manager who's in charge of Everton in that mid-2000s spell, where he was very pragmatic, but it was successful, and he was getting the most out of the least, and he was picking up little gems in the transfer market. And this is a compliment based on what I just said. It looks like he's turning West Ham into what Everton were from about 2005 to 2010-ish, where they're just a team that are really hard to beat. They pick up some good wins over the course of a season, and ultimately they're not in any trouble at all, and they might just look like they look like they're capable of maybe achieving something, even though they probably won't. With Sheffield United, they're the complete opposite of what I was describing with Aston Villa. They've gone the completely other way. They overachieved last season, and this year they just look like they've been completely figured out, and they've got no other new ideas. I don't think they'll go down. I think there's enough experience and grit in that team, and I think Chris Wilder's a wily old character who will steer them clear, but I definitely don't see them getting anywhere near the top half. I think it's back to what most people expected for Sheffield United last season. It'll be bottom 5, maybe, but not in a relegation battle as such, but not terribly far away from the points tally that the relegated sides will finish on. For this game, West Ham, I think they've got a couple of players who are really good quality, and I think they'll just have a bit too much for Sheffield United. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Sheffield United turn up and look a lot like the side that they were last season and they end up pulling it out the bag. But if you push me on it, I'd favour West Ham to win a scrappy game, maybe 1-0.
Yeah, Leeds v Arsenal now. Obviously, Leeds, as a podcast I was listening to the other day, says they're the champions of everything and nothing. They get a lot of plaudits for the way they're playing. Arsenal, not so much. But I still think ultimately Arsenal win the game. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, Leeds are kind of the flavour team for some reason. I mean, when people say that everyone's second favourite team, then they're absolutely stupid. It's just idiot pundits who seem to think that no Leeds are nobody's second favourite team. Nobody likes Leeds, apart from Leeds. Bielsa's a really good manager. I mean, he was a bit of a strange pick, wasn't he, when they brought him in there initially in the Championship, but he's done exactly what they wanted him to, and it looks like he's going to pass his remit again, because they brought him in to get them into the Premier League and keep them in the Premier League, and I think he's doing that comfortably. They're not going to go down. They've proven that they've got enough already from what we've seen so far that they're not going to be anywhere near a relegation battle. Arsenal with Arteta, again, it's a bit similar to Lampard, wasn't it? He's got the job more based on his playing career there, and the fact that he's kind of a young manager looks good on the side. If he was bald and had a big beer belly, then he probably wouldn't have got it. But fair play to him. I do think Arsenal have definitely improved since he took over. The project that he's got there looks like it's something to get behind, and a lot of the Arsenal fans seem happy with where they're going, and the players seem happy to play under him, which wasn't the case for Emery. Getting Aubameyang tied down was just massive for them. If they'd have lost Aubameyang, then I think Arsenal would have been really bang mid-table this season. But when you've got a player like that, you're always going to be in contention for the top six at least. So Leeds will give it a right good go, like they always do. They'll probably score. They'll probably have Arsenal under the cosh for a period. But I think a player like Aubameyang can always be the difference maker. And one thing Leeds have shown this season, is, as well as they've done, is they can be quite leaky. They do concede a good amount of goals, so they need to tighten up at the back. And a player like Aubameyang, I just can't see him not scoring. And they've got other players like Lacazette, who's in a bit of form as well. And Pepe looks desperate to prove himself. So I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal's front three is just too much for them and they end up winning a high-scoring game.
Yeah, Aaron, what are your predictions and thoughts on the game?
This is a game I'm actually very intrigued to see how Leeds do. They've only won one of their last 5 games, which, interestingly, was a 3-0 win over Aston Villa. But you'd probably say Arsenal are the favourites. I mean, they've lost 3 of their last 4 league games, but I do think they're okay. Arteta is improving them. I do think they're still a long way off from being the finished product, but yeah, I think Arsenal should have enough. Probably a 2-1 or a 3-1 victory for Arsenal.
Yeah, I'll be going 2-0 Arsenal. I just think they'll just pick Leeds up on the break. I think Arteta's got them more organised. I think if they get the first goal, they'll win. If not, I think Leeds could give them a bit of a hiding, to be honest. A lot of these games do depend on the first goal, so we'll have to wait and see. I think Arsenal have a bit too much. Moving on then, Liverpool and Leicester. And before I go to both of you, I think Leicester will win the game. But I'll start off with Aaron. What are your thoughts on the game?
It's so difficult to say how this game is going to go, simply because of the sheer amount of injuries that Liverpool have at the moment. I don't know exactly who's missing, but I know there's a lot of key players. And with that in mind, I don't think you can write Leicester off at all. They're top of the league. They've looked very, very good so far. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Leicester can't get the win, just because of the amount of injuries to key players Liverpool have. Just because I don't know exactly who they are and who they're probably going to play, I'll play it safe and go for a draw. But if I had to give anyone the win, I'd probably give it to Leicester.
Yeah, Paul, your thoughts?
Liverpool are missing so many players, but they've lost so few games over the last few years that you just never feel comfortable picking against them, or at least I don't. Leicester, I think, are they in the top 4, or are they top maybe even? I think the top, aren't they? The top of the league, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they don't really deserve. I don't think they played well enough to really deserve that. They've had a lot of games where a lot of luck's gone their way. They've had a stupid amount of penalties, but they are a good side. I'm not trying to pretend they're not. I just don't think that they're title contenders like some are saying they are. I really don't think that at all. Thing is, Jamie Vardy is getting up there in age. He seems like he's one bad injury away from just being finished as a player, and it just feels like it can come at any time. Liverpool, Salah's not going to be there. He's got COVID. Gomez is injured for the season. Van Dijk's injured for the season. Thiago apparently didn't train today, so it doesn't look like he's going to play. But then you've got to flip it round and look at players like Jota, who's started out like a house on fire, and Mane's banging form as well. So it's going to be a really tight game, I think, and it will just come down to luck. Ultimately, who does luck favour? Liverpool will get more luck than any club I've ever known, but Leicester just seem to be getting everything going their way right now. And would you bet against them getting another penalty? They seem to get them in every single game so far this season. So it'll be tight, and I think it'll probably be a draw. So I'll go for a 2-2.
Cool. We're moving on to what's been christened the Owen Parks Derby now, and that's R5 pissing down on a Monday night at Turf Moor. It couldn't be any more. Could Burnley beat Crystal Palace? I'll talk about this to finish off, but I'll start with Aaron. Is it a must-win game for Burnley now?
Yeah, Palace are a good side. They've done well this season. They're currently 8th in the league, but this is simply a game that Burnley have to win if they're going to start looking like a side that is going to avoid relegation. I think it would certainly be a tough one. It'll be tight. I'd expect a few goals. Both sides set up defensively. Both sides play an anti-football style, shall we say, is what a lot of people like to describe it as.
Just an organised 4-4-2. I mean, take your pick.
But yeah, it is that from both sides. Burnley have obviously looked a lot poorer, but I think this is pretty much the definition of a 1-0 either way. Whoever can get that first goal, I'd expect will probably get the win. And just because I think Burnley will want it more because they need it more. So I think I'm going to give it to Burnley for this one.
Yeah, I think Burnley will win 1-0. Or I think it'll be Burnley 1-0 or Palace 3-0. So it's either or. It's one of them. I think if I think over the years, over the times where Sean Dyche has needed to go to the well almost and come back with a win to sort of secure, I don't know, some good form going forward and big results and big games, he tends to always do it. And I think this could be the game that they do. I think Palace a great start to the season. I'm a big fan of what they're doing, but I feel like if Burnley gets the first goal, they'll win the game. But I'll have your thoughts on the game to avoid me drowning on about it for 3 hours.
This game, I think I'd probably rather go to work than sit down and watch it.
I don't know. I think I'll pay $14.95.
I don't think I'd pay 14p, mate. It might actually break the record for the ball being in play for the least amount of time. Didn't Burnley set that a couple of seasons ago, where the ball was actually in play for like less than 40 minutes out of the 90?
Yeah, against Cardiff, they won 2-1.
I wouldn't be shocked if we see that record's broken or at least come close. I mean, as we said, it's easy to sneer at these teams, isn't it, saying they play anti-football and stuff like that. And I suppose I've just kind of chimed in with that, saying I wouldn't pay to watch it. But you can't knock what they're doing, because at the end of the day, it's kept them in the Premier League for the last couple of years. And ultimately, that's just the be-all and end-all for clubs like that, especially Burnley, who are very, very small and have seldom ever been in the top league. I agree with what you said. Sean Dyche has kind of got this knack, hasn't he, of pulling out a big result just when he needs one. And Crystal Palace have this knack for just when they look like they're really clicking and they're going to sort of build towards something and really go on a great run, they always just tend to lose a random game and throw in a really good performance. It's just been the way with Palace. Just when you look like that, they're going to take the next step, they end up just completely collapsing in on themselves. This game, I mean, it could come down to just one quality player being the difference maker, like a Saha. But as I said, I could see it being really drab, tight affair where there's a lot of set pieces and a lot of fouls, and a lot of the flair players don't really get time on the ball. If I'm going to predict it, I'm going to go for a 1-1. I do think both teams will score, but I don't see either side really getting on the ball and dominating it and pinning the other team back on their own half. I think it'll kind of be end to end without tons and tons of chances where goalkeepers are making mad saves. It'll just be kind of both sides kind of build up into the final third and then can't find the killer pass or can't have that individual moment of magic. If I'm going to predict a score, I'll go for 1-1, a goalie in either half.
You've just made me really excited for this game now. I will move on to Wolves and Southampton, which I think is going to be a really good game. Both teams have started pretty well. Aaron, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts?
If it weren't for Spurs, Man City, and probably Liverpool, Leicester, I'd say this is probably the game of the weekend. Personally, it's something I'm really looking forward to. Southampton have been very good. They're fourth, which isn't too bad for the 14th best coach in the Premier League. I've said it many times before, I'm a big fan of Ralph Hasenhüttl, and I think Southampton are looking very promising to have a successful season. Wolves perhaps don't look as good, but I think that might be more down to perception, just because they haven't been playing that well. They're currently 9th. They're only 2 points off 5th. And they've spent the last 2 seasons pretty much being a surprise package of the Premier League. So Southampton seem to be at least one of the teams that are a surprise package this season, and it'll be a close one, but I think it'll be an entertaining one, definitely, and it's one I'm looking forward to. As for the game itself, I think Southampton are looking better at the moment, and I'd probably back them to get the win. I think it'll be close, but I'd say it could finish 2-1 or 3-2 to Southampton.
Cool. Interesting. I'll go to Paul now. Wolves and Southampton. What do you expect?
The two teams that look like they've really kicked on under these new managers they've got. I'm a big fan of Nuno Espirito Santos. Hasenhüttl, I wasn't too sure about him for a while. I kind of thought that he was just another one of these sort of overhyped, sexy managers who gets praised just because of a style of football rather than results. But over the past couple of months, he's really seems to have kicked Southampton on, and he's proven that he is a sort of really top-class up-and-coming manager. But I don't see Southampton's form lasting. A lot of people are saying that they look like they could challenge for Europe, and the players they've got are all capable of playing at a higher level, like Ings and Ward-Prowse. Maybe they are, but I just when I look at Southampton, I don't look like a team that's ready to really kick on and achieve something. I just see a team that is probably slightly above average, but just in a really good spell of form that will prop that. And over the course of the season, they'll drop back down to their usual level. When I say usual level, I just mean comfortable mid-table, where they win a big game, they lose a big game, and kind of no one really thinks much of it. Wolves, they're really, really solid, aren't they? They don't seem to go on really mad winning runs or losing runs. They draw a lot of games, or they just tend to nick a lot of games by 1-goal margins. I think this will be, and as Aaron said, if it wasn't for Leicester-Liverpool, this would probably be the best game of the weekend to watch. And I think this one will be the opposite of what I've just described a minute ago with Palace and Burnley. I think this one will be end-to-end, water full of chances where you see goalkeepers making saves and close calls for defenders, balls off the line, things like that. For my prediction, I'll go for Wolves just to sneak it. I'll go with Wolves for a 2-1. I think Southampton will play really well, but I think Wolves just have they've got players who can hit a slightly higher ceiling, at least for me. And I think both teams really go at each other. Wolves will probably have more goals because I know Ward-Prowse is a big doubt, and without him on the pitch, Ings doesn't seem to be the same player. I'll go for 2-1 Wolves.
Yeah, I'll go down the middle and go 1-1. a huge fan of Nuno, huge fan of Ralph Hasenhuttl. I think two of the most talented coach in the Premier League. I think the way they get everything out the teams. I think Nuno's slightly more pragmatic in the way he sets his team up, but Ralph's teams press really well and make life really difficult. So I think they'll cancel each other out. I think it'll be 1-1, and I think ultimately, I think for as long as Danny Ings is fit, I think Southampton will be in the top 10 of the Premier League. I think for me, the top 9, I think like people have got it pretty much nailed on. The usual top 6, and then obviously with Leicester, Everton, Wolves, and then I think the last spot will either be Southampton or Crystal Palace. Personally, who's going to sort of nick the 10th place? At the moment, you would say Southampton. But we will see. I'll go 1-1. But that'll be it for this week's podcast. I would like to thank Terry and I'd like to thank Paul and Aaron.
I know you can't see me, but I am much better at looking than Terry is.
Oh, great. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Not a problem, mate.
So that was it. Hope you enjoyed listening to the thoughts of myself, Paul, and Aaron. Of the games to come, what we think of the teams and what will potentially happen next. Be sure to listen to the previous pods, particularly the Crystal Palace and obviously the Burnley pods, where we've got a fan from each club to talk about their club, what's right, what's wrong, where they can go next, and apart from that, we'll see you next time.